Welcome to the album show, and we're speaking with Jim Gabriel, who has a wonderful new album out called Sojourn. Good to speak to you, Jim.
You as well. You as well.
Now, I'd like you to tell us and all the listeners, just give us an overview about Sojourn.
Well, I came up with the concept of doing an album probably about 10 years ago when I recorded some music to raise some funds to go to Paris. I was accepted to study improvisation with a famous improviser named Naji Hakim. Mm-hmm. And this is organ improvisation. And Paris has been the center of the world for improvisation for about 300 years in organ. And I was studying at University of Washington doing my doctorate in organ, and I thought, well, what a fun little next step to study improvisation. So as a way of raising funds, I made an album of Debussy and some Bach, and I said, oh, well, I'll just improvise a little bit.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was really fun, and I said, okay, it was a good experience. At some point, I need to make an album of just my material.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and it went over very, very well. And then a couple years ago, I said, all right, I need to revisit this, and I said, all right, well, where should I go? And I found Will Ackerman's website, and I met with him. We got along famously, and I made my recording there. And it was just an overall really wonderful experience that allowed me to kind of express myself, express my thoughts into music, really for the first time in a beautiful professional setting. And it was just such a fantastic experience working with Will. It was great.
Yeah, we have quite a relationship with Will and his artists. I think virtually done reviews for all of them now. It's amazing.
Have you really? That's great.
Now, I'm all for really good opening tracks to albums, Jim, and when I heard the opening refrains from South Bend, Indiana, 1989, I really thought, this is good because you set the scene here. So tell us about that track.
Well, it's interesting. I really had various ideas about music when I would sit down and play. Some I had pretty much composed. Some I had a harmonic overview, what I wanted to do, but I didn't really have any melody. Some I had no idea. This first track, I literally sat down at the piano and they started recording, and I had no idea what I was going to play.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just sat down and played. It's the only one where I literally just made it up. Let's go.
Wow.
So I started playing it. I just loved the way it sounded. I loved the way it kind of flowed. And I'd love to say that it had a real strong intellectual underpinning to my decision, but no, I literally just sat down and played. And it really it flows from me that way, much more viscerally. It's much more emotional when I play that way, because then I hold it as long as I want. I do whatever I want to do. I go to the next chord however I want to move.
Yeah.
And so it really it speaks of my emotional thoughts at that moment, which is why I love doing this kind of music. Now, the interesting thing is the naming of it. I went to University of Notre Dame, and I did graduate studies there, and I started in 1989. And that first year at Notre Dame was probably the favorite, best, I don't know what you want to say, year of my life. I just loved it. Everything was right with the world. The people there were so friendly, and I learned so much, and I grew so much. And I thought, what a great title for this, because it's just, everything's peaceful, everything's right. It's just, you can kind of sit back and say, yeah, this is really good. This is a good day, if you will. And so that's why I named it South Bend, Indiana, 1989.
Then we move to track 2 of the album. Is it pronounced Chaconne?
Chaconne.
Chaconne, right, yeah. Tell me about that one.
Chaconne, I basically came up with the bass line, and I thought, oh, this is really fun, and then I started playing around with the melody. This is the one where I didn't actually have a melody completely outlined. I thought I kind of have an idea where I wanted to go, but I was just going to improvise a melody on the bass line. A chaconne is basically a repeated bass line over and over again.
Yeah, I picked that out, actually.
Yeah, well, and so you can see where the title comes from.
Yeah.
This one was an easy one to name. And typically in the Baroque period, they would also go into major, which I also did, and then return back to the original pattern, which we decided not to do.
Yeah.
But it's brooding. I really like it because it has this real kind of brooding emotion to it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, adding Eugene Friesen, the cellist, was
Indeed.
just a brilliant idea on Will's part. And just it was a really, I loved how the cello transformed it, really made it blossom.